Randy Arozarena is officially a Seattle Mariner as the Mariners made the trade at the MLB trade deadline in 2024 to acquire the left fielder. Now, it's pretty obvious that Randy fits this lineup pretty well. He's a guy that this lineup was sorely lacking. But honestly, there are 3 reasons the Mariners made this trade, and number 1 is a pretty sneaky reason because it's one that I didn't really think about when they first made this trade. So let's go into it. The first one I want to talk about as to why they made this trade is, well, duh, the Mariners offense sucks. A bottom 4 lineup in all of baseball. Obviously, Julio is out right now, JP Crawford is out, and a lot of guys are performing well below their career norms. Randy Arozarena is a guy who at the start of the year was well below his career norms as well. Overall in 2024 in 100 games, Randy's hitting 211, 318, 394 with a 104 OPS. Plus, he's hit 15 home runs with 37 RBIs and stolen 16 bags. That is well below his career norm where he's always been at least a 120 hitter with a career 123 with his time with the Rays and the Cardinals. Now on the surface level, you may look at this and say, what the heck is wrong with the Mariners going out and trading for a guy that's hitting 211? And if that is you, if you're that person, I implore you to listen to the rest of this video because there's so much more to Randy Arozarena than these overall numbers. This really tells the story right here. In March and April, Randy was hitting 143. In May, he hit 178. But in June, he hit 291, and in July, he's hitting 275. First half, Randy, 202. Second half, Randy, 333. Randy got off to a slow start. It happens with guys in baseball, and Randy is no exception. He got off to a slow start, but he has looked every bit of the player that was an all-star in 2023 so far in June and July. And if you just look at his overall numbers right now, Randy's probably the best player on your friggin' baseball team right now. The Mariners needed to add offense, and you know what? If you just look at his season numbers, Randy Arozarena has been an average offensive player, but you look at him over the last 2 months, he's trending in the right direction. He's the best player on your team right now, full stop. I mean, we've been running Mitch Haniger in the outfield and Dylan Moore once in a while. What could we possibly be complaining about here? That also goes into his playoff series where in 33 games, Randy's hitting 336, 414, 690 with a 1.104 OPS. Guys, Randy Arozarena has the 3rd highest slugging percentage in all of baseball history with a minimum of 100 plate appearances behind Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Playoff Randy is a real thing, and even if it's for the Mariners in 2024 where hopefully they do end up making the playoffs, Randy could be a big spark plug in that lineup. Number 2 that I want to talk about is honestly Randy the person, the intangibles that he brings, because while he's not a great defender, he does make some fantastic plays, albeit sometimes because he doesn't take a right route to a ball or what have you, but he's just a fun, electric guy. You've heard from Luke Raley and all of Randy's other teammates that he is somebody that everybody loves. And even when he was traded from the Rays to the Mariners, he proved that by going out and sitting in his section out in Tropicana Field in that final game that he had with the Rays. Instead of, just flying straight out to meet the Mariners, he said, let me go thank the fans that have loved me for so very long and hang out with them in the section that they made for me. Like, have you ever seen another player do this? And look at his wife. His wife's over there bawling her eyes out because the fans mean so much to Randy and his family. They've been such a big part of what he has been to that entire team. And because of that, Randy Arozarena is a guy that is beloved by the fans, a guy who makes time for all the fans, and that's just incredible, man. I can already hear all the people in the comments be like, oh, well, he's a great guy. Cool, awesome, but can he play baseball? Who cares if he's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. He's a good dude, and he's someone that you want on your baseball team. There are other guys out there right now. In fact, Jazz Chisum just got traded for, which is actually going to be part of point number 1. Jazz Chisum just got traded for, but you know what? Randy's a guy who's never had anything bad said about him in the clubhouse, whereas Jazz has. The Mariners needed a good vibes guy. We've been saying that for the past month and a half. They lost Gino. People have been saying, oh, Gino would never let the vibes get this low. Well, here's your good vibes guy, a guy who, even when he's struggling, seems to just light up a clubhouse with that smile and looks like he's always having fun on a baseball field. And when him and Julio are on the field together, I think the 2 of them are going to make that outfield so much fun, so electric out there in the outfield at T-Mobile Park, that I think that Randy was just the perfect fit. And not only that, the Mariners have him for a few more years, and that means that through this season and then 2 more potential playoff runs, you will have Randy Arozarena for relatively cheap. I mean, he's going to be in arbitration 3 and 4 over the next couple of years. Arbitration 4 might get a little expensive. We'll see how he plays coming up into that time of the contract. But overall, you have Randy Arozarena for a few more years, and that's another big part of it. But the big one for me is the cost for Randy Arozarena, and this has multiple parts to it because we have seen a few trades go down so far. And for the Mariners, they gave up Brody Hopkins, which we know. They gave up Aiden Smith, which we know, and there's a player to be named later, which we don't know who that's going to be yet if I had to guess, and I'm just throwing a name out there. So if this is wrong, please don't like roast me in the comments. I'm gonna say DeWall Joseph. Thoughts? Thoughts on it being like DeWall Joseph, who we just signed in the international signing period, I think, last season. With that being said, the cost of Randy Arozarena, because again, you get him this season and for 2 more years, okay? Arbitration guy for 2 more years. And for everything you're getting with him, a guy who has been one of the best playoff contributors in the baseball history, one of the most electric personalities in the game, and a guy who is basically a 2020 guy every single year and has never posted an OPS plus below 120. The cost for him isn't that terrible when you look at what the Yankees gave up for Jazz Chisum, which we'll talk about here in a second. But overall, trading Aiden Smith sucks. Aiden Smith, in my opinion, is a guy that could very easily, and maybe not very easily, but a guy who could be an everyday outfielder for sure, with the potential to be an all-star. Brody Hopkins, in my opinion, his floor is like a high leverage reliever, but both those guys are probably 2-3 years away, right? And the player to be named later, we don't know who it's going to be yet, so let's just not even talk about it. Let's talk about the Jazz Chisum trade really quick. It took forever, but the full trade was finally announced. The Yankees got center fielder and second baseman Jazz Chisum. The Marlins got Agustin Ramirez, Jared Cerna, and Abraham Ramirez. Now, Cerna and Agustin Ramirez are number 19 and number 20 respectively. A second baseman and shortstop in high A in Jared Cerna. Agustin Ramirez is in AAA as a catcher. And Abraham Ramirez is down in rookie ball for the New York Yankees, or at least he was, and he's hitting 348, 447, 513. He's having a hell of a year. The real prize there, at least in the short term, is Agustin Ramirez, a catcher who is an absolute freak behind the plate, having an incredible season in AAA. In 2024, he's hitting 269, nice, 358, 505 with an 862 OPS. He's hit 20 home runs in 87 games. 52 home runs in 318 career games in the Yankees minor league system. He went from AA to AAA this year, and he's 22 years old. In other words, to get Jazz Chisum, the Yankees had to give up a guy who's probably a major leaguer as soon as like the beginning of next season, who's putting up monster numbers in AAA. Okay, a Mariners version of that probably would have had to have been Cole Young. Okay, now again, he is number 20 on the Yankees prospect list, but I guarantee you that when they did the re-ranks, he would have been much, much higher. In fact, people had him as possibly a top 100 prospect. And keep in mind, all of that is for a guy who has a career 102 OPS plus. He's hit 13 home runs this year, hitting 249, 323, 407 with an OPS plus of 101. He's had one good year in 2022 where he hit 14 home runs at 254, 325, 535 with a 138 OPS plus. He's a little bit cheaper than Randy Arozarena, and he is still under contract for 2 more years. He'd also be a free agent after 2026, but the same length of time as Randy is. So the Mariners got a more proven player, a guy who was much better liked in the clubhouse by all sources, and they got him for cheaper. I do not know how you can look at what the Yankees gave up for Jazz and compare that to what the Mariners gave up for Randy and say that the Mariners did not do a better job than the Yankees did. Now, there is a world where both guys made sense on this Mariners roster, where Jazz is in right or second base or even shortstop, and Randy's in left field. He was the next guy on my list in terms of guys the Mariners should go out and get. So don't get me wrong. I'm not like trying to rag on Jazz here. I think Jazz would have been a fine player and would have fit really well with the Mariners. I was saying that the cost the Mariners had to pay for Randy Arozarena, I don't even know what a comp would be. Like I said, a guy who's, you know, relatively MLB ready, close, who's putting up monster numbers. The Mariners really don't have that guy in their system right now. Again, I think the closest guy would have been Cole Young. I do. Tyler Locklear, maybe, but I think Cole Young would have been the guy that you would have needed to give up in that deal for Jazz Chisum. And the Mariners aren't doing that, because if they're giving up Cole Young or even Tyler Locklear, they're doing it in a much bigger trade for like Vlad or Luis Robert. They're not doing it for Jazz Chisum. And so that's why I think the Mariners made a great move by going out there and getting Randy Arozarena, who they actually got because they outbid the Kansas City Royals. Apparently the Royals were in on Randy Arozarena, but they got outbid and obviously handed up to the Mariners. The Mariners outbid the Kansas City Royals for Randy. Now again, I don't want to say that what the Mariners gave up for Randy Arozarena wasn't a lot, because it was. The Mariners had a hard time making this deal because Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins are 2 guys they like a lot, and the player to be named later will be no slouch either. But if you compare those 3 players to the 3 players that were given up for Jazz Chisum, I don't think the Mariners have that in their system that make as much sense. If the Yankees were able to give up a guy in AAA who's putting up monster numbers, The Mariners don't have that guy. Again, Tyler Locklear might have been the closest. And at that point, if I'm giving up Tyler Locklear, I'm going bigger than Jazz Chisum. I'm not trading Tyler Locklear for Jazz Chisum. So obviously the Mariners needed the offense. They also got a great guy in Randy Arozarena, a guy who just seems like a great clubhouse fit and is controlled for a few more years. And the price they paid for it wasn't as much as it could have been if they would have went after Jazz, which means they still have the firepower at the top end of their prospect rankings to go out there and make another trade if they need to. With that being said, I'm recording this video on Saturday at like 2 p.m. So by the time you're seeing this, maybe the Mariners did make that big trade. Who knows? But with that being said, that is why I think that Randy Arozarena was a sneaky good trade for the Seattle Mariners. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.